Hello and welcome to our Live from the Farallones program. My name is Jim Tietz and I'm a biologist with Point Blue Conservation Science. And I am joined today by research assistants Joey Nagarian.
I'm Joey.
And Alex Soldo, who is running the video.
Hello.
And we are coming to you live today from the Farallon Islands National Wildlife Refuge, which is located 30 miles west of the Golden Gate Bridge. That's really weird hearing all the radio chatter.
Close the doors real quick.
Excuse us. So this refuge is only accessible by boat, and the public are not allowed on the island. So that's why we're especially happy to be bringing you this event to you virtually and to show you the island. So the aim of these live programs is to engage the public and to raise awareness and excitement for the Farallon Islands and its unique ecosystem. Today we're excited to take you on a biodiversity tour of the island, but first we need to give you a little background on the island. The Fish and Wildlife Service manages this island, and Point Blue is proud to be a partner with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we have had a cooperative agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service going back to 1968. So our work informs management and supports the wildlife. The Farallones are well known for their breeding seabirds and pinnipeds, and there are over 350,000 seabirds that breed on the island and tens of thousands of pinnipeds. The islands are also well known for rare birds among bird watchers in the state of California and elsewhere. In fact, you may not know this, but this wildlife refuge has the highest list total of any other wildlife refuge in all the rest of the United States. So if you have any guesses as to how high that list total is, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll give you the answer in a couple minutes. So the aim of this, what we're going to be talking to you about today, is biodiversity on the island. And one of the ways that we celebrate our biodiversity here on the Farallones is through a Farallon-a-thon. And a Farallon-a-thon is a bio blitz that we do for 1 week. But what actually is a Farallon-a-thon?
So the format of this is I'll be asking Jim questions, and then Jim will kind of answer them and bring us along the journey of biodiversity on the island. So Jim, what is a Farallon-a-thon?
So Farallon-a-thons were initiated back in 1982 by Peter Pyle, or I think it was 1987 back by Peter Pyle, and he wanted to celebrate the wildlife and biodiversity on the island through a week-long bio-blitz. And a bio-blitz basically counts every single species that you encounter in a certain area. And bio-blitzes are great for areas that are poorly monitored. But the Farallones is obviously well monitored, so this is just a way for us to celebrate our biodiversity on the island and also to track what's going on the island, and it's a way for us to really see what's out here in a week-long period and enjoy what we're doing out here.
What species does it include? Is it everything, or what's the?
Yeah, so all species are counted, all birds. Every single bird is counted as 1 point, and every mammal counts as a point. Every insect. We do have special bonus points though for rare birds, where you get 5 points, and then we also the islands are well known for sharks, and we give 5 points for every shark attack that's seen, and 1 point for every shark sighting that's seen. And we also give a point for our endemic cricket and the endemic salamander.
So you kind of answered it there, but how does it quantify biodiversity on the island?
So it quantifies biodiversity just through the way we keep the point tallies, and those point tallies are good for tracking biodiversity across years, and so we can kind of look at trends in how our Farallon-a-thons are doing over time as well.
And so then what's been the highest Farallon-a-thon total?
The highest Farallon-a-thon total was 240 back in 2001, and the lowest total was 122, which was just a few years ago. The totals tend to vary quite a lot, and if you guys have any ideas, any guesses as to what our average score is, please feel free to put that in the chat. And by the way, the island total.
Wait, I have some guesses.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna say, what are the guesses for the bird list for the Farallons?
So we have 1,000 as one guess, 427, 439, at least 20 species is one guess, and then 417.
Wow, some well-educated guesses in there. The actual total is 435, and the averages. Any average guesses for our Farallon-a-thons? Have you gotten any guesses on that yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
You can wait.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So then, why are we out here in the fall, and why is the diversity higher in the fall?
So the diversity is really high in the fall because there's a lot of birds and other animals that are migrating south, and there's a lot of marine mammals that are coming down along the coast, and there are also a lot of songbird species and insects and bats that end up drifting offshore and finding refuge on the island.
And you mentioned marine mammals, but what other marine animals are migrating past?
Yeah, there's
specifics.
There's a lot of sharks that show up here, a lot of white sharks, and they're using the island to hunt for seals and sea lions to put on fat so they can migrate out to the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where it's thought that they breed. There's also a lot of whales and other cetaceans that we see, like dolphins and porpoises, and they're heading south to warmer waters, and they're feeding on all the krill, which are like shrimp, along the island. We also see occasionally we'll see leatherback sea turtles. Saw one last year, which was pretty amazing, and animals like that and like sooty shearwater, they're migrating all the way over from the western Pacific, like New Zealand and Indonesia, coming all the way over here to feed off of California, and then they head back. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think of a turtle migrating across the ocean in 1 year and migrating all the way back to the other side to breed.
So why do all these different species of songbirds fly out to the island in the fall?
So the songbirds are coming out, and most of them are juveniles, meaning they were just hatched a few months ago. And these juveniles they've never migrated south before, and because their parents don't have time to raise them and train them on how to migrate south, they just have to do it innately, meaning that these species evolved so that the juveniles can migrate all by themselves down to the tropics. As you can imagine, it's very easy for a young bird, as it's migrating, having never migrated before, to make mistakes. And a lot of these birds they don't have their orientation down correct, so a lot of them end up drifting out this way towards the west, and then the weather plays a big factor in whether they come out to the island. A lot of them are just migrating down along the coast, but when the fog is covering up the coast, and all these species are migrating at night, so they're just using the stars to navigate by. And as they're migrating down south, if there's a marine layer or a fog layer that's covering the coast, they can't actually see the coastline, and they end up just drifting offshore. And as the sun comes up, all these little birds that are out there migrating above the clouds suddenly realize that they need to drop down through the clouds and find land so they can feed and get ready for the next migration event, the next day of migration. And so, but when they come down through the clouds, they find that they're out over the ocean because they accidentally drifted off to the west. And if the ceiling, if the fog or cloud ceiling is high, then they can see all the way back to the mainland, and they can just fly back to the mainland. If it's really low and we're just covered in fog, then the birds cannot find the island, and we can't see the birds or whales or anything else that's around the island. However, if the cloud ceiling is just right and obscures their ability to see the mainland, but they can see the island, then the island acts like a vacuum and just sucks in all the birds. And so we get these big fallouts, and those are the truly magical days on the Farallones.
And then the final question is, what does the Farallon-a-thon have to do with science and conservation?
So the Farallon-a-thon is just, it's a way for us to have, not just a way for us to have fun out here, but it's also, we're collecting our data over a week-long period. And these trends that we're seeing within our Farallon-a-thon, these point trends that we're seeing, they kind of reflect also the general trends that we're seeing in wildlife, such as the number of shark attacks that we're seeing for every year has declined since the early 2000s. And that means that our overall point totals, because we get 5 points for every shark attack, that means that our overall point totals are getting lower and lower. And then also just like general bird diversity, or bird abundance on the mainland, as you probably are all aware, has decreased as well. I think it's dropped by like a fourth or something in the last few decades. And so that means that the numbers of birds and bird diversity that we're getting here are decreasing as well. But this data that we're collecting is providing data for the broader conservation agenda. Conservation means that we're trying to achieve in North America. So not only is this fun, but we're also providing data for conservation and management.
Great, excellent. So we have a few questions that we'll ask, just as fun little questions about the island, and you guys can type into the chat with your answers. So what do you guys think is the most abundant migrant bird that we get during the fall? We'll give you a minute to answer. More people. Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you all are aware, like we get birds that are flying out over the ocean, birds that are landing on the island. So we're counting birds, all birds. They might not even land on the island, and we're still counting them.
Yeah, and I guess it's most abundant migrant species. I suppose to clarify.
T asks if we can show a bit of the island so that we know that we're not just in an office somewhere.
Yeah, can you spin around the chair and just show?
This way?
Yeah,
well, you could go out the front door.
Just go slowly.
Yeah, go out the front door.
Okay.
So, this is our window looking out into the ocean. And then, why don't you come over here? We'll go out the front door.
There's outside the door.
This is our beautiful island. Why don't you come over here, Alex, so you can stand in front of the house. Show us our house.
There's Joey. It's a beautiful day.
You show me over here.
Okay.
So this is a net where we catch all of our birds. We would open the net, but it's actually pretty windy, and it could hurt the birds if they got caught in a windy net. So that's why we have our nets closed today. Also, not many birds on a windy day.
Rebecca asks, how many trees do we have on the island?
We have 3 trees.
3 trees.
We used to have 4 trees, but one of the trees fell down, and now we just have 3.
So 3 trees and shrubs. So we're returning into the house. And we have some guesses for the
All right.
common.
Great.
Okay, so we have guesses: Wilson's warbler,
Good guess.
Sooty shearwater, red-necked phalaropes, golden-crowned sparrow, yellow-rumped warbler.
These are all good guesses. Very common birds.
And those are the guesses.
Right.
Yeah, sooty shearwater is actually the correct answer on that one.
Sooty shearwaters.
Yeah. Although some years redneck phalaropes can be so abundant here that they could outnumber the sooty shearwaters, but that's pretty rare. In general, it's usually the sooty shearwaters. And then for land birds, those native species like yellow rumps and golden-crowned sparrows, those are also very common here. However, do you guys have any guesses as to what the most common songbird is?
He kind of gave it away.
Did I?
Yeah, no.
Well, it's not golden-crowned sparrow, it's not yellow-rumped warbler. Not Wilson's warbler. It's a weird one. We actually see very few that actually land on the island, but we'll get big flocks of them over the island, and then they fly back to the mainland.
We'll wait for some guesses.
Yeah.
Do you have a guess, Alex?
I feel like there's too much that I would be thinking about. Okay, we have 2 guesses. 3 guesses. White-crowned sparrow. Pine siskin.
Good guess.
European starling.
There it is.
And another guess for European starlings or horned larks. So the answer is
European starlings.
European starlings.
Yeah. We'll just start getting these big flocks late in the fall of 10s, 20s, 100s. Sometimes we'll get these flocks of like 400 flying around. Interesting, last year we had a flock of, I can't remember the exact number, it was like 450 something pine siskins, which was the largest flock of pine siskins we've ever had on the island. That was very exciting. However, the starlings just keep coming and coming and coming.
So this one's a little more difficult. So a big thing out here on the island is finding first island records, which are birds that have never been recorded on the island. And so it's always kind of a big find and a really exciting day when a first island record is found. So the question is, what was the last first island record? This one's pretty difficult, so maybe we'll give you a minute and then just let you guys know, unless people are very informed.
Yeah.
If there are no guesses, we can just...
I do have another question that was asked.
Oh, okay, let's go there.
Isabella asks, can you talk about the biodiversity of humans on the island?
Interesting. So it's I think that Native Americans are not known to have come out to the islands. Or at least it's not known whether they did or not. There were, when the Russians started coming down in the 1800s, they did bring some, I think they were Eskimos or some people from like Alaska down to help hunt the seals. And so there's a few native people that are buried on the island, or at least they were. I'm not sure where the remains are anymore. But I believe that they are not from the area. They're not natives of this area. And then starting in the 1850s, about 1840s or 50s, there were Russian and American sealers coming out to the island, and they essentially came out to hunt the fur seals and take the skins off of the seals and then sell them to China. And there were over 100,000 fur seals on this island, which is crazy to think about. Since now there's only tens of thousands of sea lions and fur seals, so not nearly as many. But they ended up killing off pretty much all of the fur seals and sending all of those pelts to China. And then once they were done with that, then the next group that came out here were the eggers, and that was soon after, because the population in San Francisco was really burgeoning with the gold rush, and they didn't have enough chickens in California, in the Bay Area, to support all these new immigrants. So these people were coming out to the island to collect the myrrh eggs, and that was done for a few decades until they started these egg wars, essentially, where different competing companies ended up killing each other, and then the lighthouse keepers, I think, were also getting involved. Finally, the government just cracked down and said, we're just going to make this a wildlife refuge. And so after it became a refuge, then there was no more myrrh, no more egg collecting, no more fur seal killing, and the lighthouse keepers were the main people that were out here for a while. And in World War II, there was a huge population increase when the Navy came onto the island, and I believe the total number of people on the island during World War II was in the 90s, which is a really difficult number to think of, because there's just 6 of us right now, and that's kind of like the maximum number that we have in the fall out here is 6 people, and that always seems like kind of like we're at our maximum with 6 people. So to imagine like 95 people out here is kind of amazing to think about.
And it's 95 acres is the main island that we live on, so to give you some perspective, it's a person per acre, which out here is pretty...
Yeah, most of the acres are not really habitable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, these 2 houses, the ones we just showed you, those are the 2 houses that are on the island for people to live in. All of Point Blue lives in this house, which we call the PRBO house, and then the other house is called the Coast Guard house, because that's the house that the Coast Guard used to live in. And all the other buildings, houses that were used for people to live in, most of those houses have all been torn down. The only other buildings on the island are the powerhouse, where we have our generators and our solar batteries, and we have another building for our carpentry shop and for our pipes that we use to transport water around the island. And then we have another house that's over a boathouse over at our north landing. Those are the only buildings that remain, but there used to be a lot of buildings out here, and there's also a lot of infrastructure for water storage, because as you can imagine, water is a premium out here. We only get about 14, 15 inches of rain a year out here, and if you had 95 people out here, you'd have to have lots of places to store all the water. And so there's lots of little foundations everywhere for places where they have water tanks. There's a couple domes that are left that we no longer use for water. our water is now held in a 100,000 gallon cistern, and we collect the water off of a catchment pad, and then we run it through many filters to get all of the nastiness out of the water. And by the time we drink it, it tastes like regular water, I think. I'm not sure if other people think the same, but I've been out here for a while, as you can tell.
By the beard.
Yeah, by the beard. Any guesses on,
Well, we have one question that pertains to the human aspect.
all right.
Rebecca asks, when were the houses built?
Ooh, back in, I think in the 1880s. I don't have the exact year, but I think the 1880s is when they were built for the lighthouse keepers.
Okay. So we do have some guesses. Some sort of storm petrel. A Siberian centaur. Northern gannet. Megan says, Mark Detling is a bit of a cheater and looked in eBird. And he says dusky cap.
He doesn't know off the top of his head. That's surprising.
And then horn fluffin.
We have dusky cap flycatcher is the correct answer. All of those were first records at some point, except for the Siberian centaur, which I am awaiting to arrive any day now.
Every day, Jim looks out the window,
Yeah.
waiting for it to arrive.
Yep. There was a band drum storm petrel just like 4 years ago. That was the first on record. So all of those are good guesses.
And the dusky cap flycatcher is primarily southwestern species in the U.S., right?
Yeah. And then its range extends all the way down through Latin America. There are several records in California though every year, and so it's been kind of overdue for the Farallones to show up out here.
Lishka asks if there are any wren tits.
Yeah, wren tits are not migratory. There are many species that are resident to California which have never occurred on the Farallones. Wren tit being one of them. There's also bush tits and chickadees and titmice and scrub jays. Yeah. So there's several species that are common right along the coastline of California, but do not come out here. There are a few that are common along the coastline that are extremely rare here, like Buick's wren, which showed up last year. It's just the 4th island record.
And most of those species are either resident to their area, and that usually means that they're weaker flyers as well. So they don't necessarily have the ability to fly 30 miles in one go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Never evolved to migrate or travel long distances. But I think we average about 2 new species a year, it seems. 1 to 2 new species a year. So maybe
Center will be the next one.
Yeah, it could be. Any more questions?
Well, we have one that doesn't pertain to birds because we have other species here that aren't birds. So we were wondering if you guys wanted to guess what the most abundant migrating marine mammal was.
Yeah.
Most abundant migrating marine mammal. We'll wait for some guesses to come in.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, you could talk a little bit more about the fur seal colony, right? Because that's a pretty big conservation success story.
True.
Yeah.
So that, after the colony was killed off in the 1800s, pretty much by like the 1860, they were all gone. There were no fur seals that bred on the Farallones from around 1860 until the early 2000s, or 1998 I think is the year, when the first fur seal pups were seen on the island. There were a few fur seals seen throughout the late 1900s, 1970 on by Point Blue biologists, and but 1998 they started breeding, and the colony has just continued to grow and grow and grow. And I can't remember the exact number now that Pete just told me but there are probably around a couple thousand pups that are born every year now, and the colony is probably like around 4,000 or so, the overall colony, which is pretty exciting, that we have gone from 0 for over 100 years to now a colony that's growing annually. So now this brings up the question that you said marine mammal. What's the most abundant marine mammal?
Yeah.
We have some guesses.
Okay.
So we have 2 guesses for humpback whale, 1 guess for elephant seals. James Lee says gray whales. Isabella says Pacific white-sided dolphins. And those are our guesses.
All right. What's the answer?
Humpback whales.
Humpback whales.
What about the sea lions and seals? They might
Yeah, I guess so. We didn't think of that when we were writing the question. Because they're not migrating past, though.
No.
Yeah.
But they might migrate away.
Away.
Come back.
Yeah. So, technically, we still have the right answer for the way the question is worded. Yeah, and I think that's, do you have anything else?
No. If you would like to see more about the Farallon-a-thon, you can check out our blog, which we have in Point Blue's website, and you can learn more about Point Blue and our research by going to our website as well.
And we post daily eBird checklists, so if you want to follow along with our sightings out here every day.
Yeah, we're probably going to start Farallon-a-thon tomorrow and take a trip over to West End Island to see the fur seal colony up close and look at tag sites. And that'll probably be our first day, and then we're supposed to get some good weather for migrating birds to come out on the weekend. So we're hoping to time the weather and bird arrivals with our Farallon-a-thon.
So we were asked if we could end with an outside view of the island again.
Sure.
And Rebecca asked, what is your birdathon group name?
Farallon fur seals.
The Farallon Fur Seals.
Is that on the spot?
No, it's actually on there.
It's actually, okay.
Okay, let's go outside
All right.
for ending the video. You're back outside. There's Jim. Woo. There's Saddle Rock. And there's Joey and Jim.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.